This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and we are both sports reporters in Syracuse, New York, who have this lovely podcast about the Mets where we talk about the great things they do and sometimes the terrible things they do. We are coming at you right now at 12:36 in the morning after the Mets lost Game 1 of the NLCS to the Dodgers 9-0. Zippo, how we feeling?
The Mets laid not only a goose egg, like an ostrich egg, like a very large egg tonight. Yeah, not a great showing for the Mets in Game 1 of the NLCS. Now, here's the thing. I did not want to say I told you so tonight. Not a big I told you so person.
No, say
However,
it. Girl, you nailed it.
I told you so.
She
I told
nailed
you
it
all last night, but I'm not happy about it. I wish it didn't happen. I wish I was wrong. I sat here in this exact seat approximately 24 hours ago and said that I did not like the decision to start Kodai Senga in Game 1. I literally said the words, if he is not on, you have a problem with your bullpen. All of a sudden, you are up a creek without a paddle, and you know what the Mets were tonight? They were up a creek without a paddle.
She said it last night, and if you were here, you know that. This was the risk, right? And I think that obviously now, based on what happened, many people are going to look back and say this was a risk that was not worth taking. I wonder if a part of all of this and the decision making, like I do know that compared to some of the other pitchers that the Mets have, Senga is pretty particular about the rest that he wants and needs, and I'm sure that went into it. But I'll be honest with you, And I know last night I said I was comfortable with it, so I'm not going back on that. But the one thing that made me nervous before I even sat down to watch this game was when he, in his, when they were asking him questions in SNY in the press conference. Pre-game.
There was an ominous tone.
There was doubt. Right? Like you could tell that he had put pressure on himself.
Foreshadowing was heavy.
It was. And honestly, like just the fact that he would say that out loud, I guess I appreciate the fact that he is open about his nervousness. But if you saw that, you know, it was this feeling where he didn't really seem super confident. And I already could tell, like it was almost giving like a little hint or a little sprinkle of Edwin Diaz. Like I'm putting too much pressure on myself. Now I'm going to go out here and immediately blow it.
He said, quote, more than being glad or happy, there's definitely tension inside myself. Kodai, I saw the tension. I did see it. I believe you.
The tension built
Senga
up.
goes out there. Look, we can get into the reasons why this was just a bad idea. It was a gamble. Like you said, it was a gamble. The Mets had every single starter on full rest. They had 3 days off before this. They kind of took every advantage that they had going into this series and managed to, for lack of a better term, F it up. The Dodgers played Game 5 that the Mets did not play. They were coming off of less rest than the Mets. The Mets had a fully rested pitching staff, a fully rested Sean Manaea, who has been their ace down the stretch, and they chose not to go to him in Game 1. And look, it didn't pay off. I know the bats did not hit. I know all of that, but I just think we need to take a moment on the Senga decision because from the first inning of this game, the train was sliding down a very large hill. No one put the parking brake on, and the train was sliding, okay?
I've been liking the transportation analogies lately.
Thank you.
The train really feel fitting.
Off the tracks, off.
To say the very least.
Off the track. He throws for his 13 of his first 16 pitches for balls, just couldn't find the plate. I think from that point on, did I think the game was over after the first inning or even the second? No, but it certainly was going to be an uphill climb immediately.
It was a hole from the jump. From the second the first pitch came out, you could tell he didn't have his stuff. You mentioned it, right? But 13 of his first 16 pitches are balls. He loads the bases in the first inning. He's out after his final line is 1.1 innings pitched, 2 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 walks, and 0 strikeouts. It was an off day, period. There was no way around it. And to your point, you knew that once they needed to start bringing in other guys, and the guy who they bring in first is Reed Garrett. And I'm not saying that I actually think that Garrett towards the end of this year has in many ways redeemed himself and had some decent performances.
Yeah, well, Reed Garrett was the best guy on the mound tonight.
Tonight was no exception.
Sure.
You know? But you had the feeling immediately like, we have a problem. And I know we'll get into this too, but I got to give some credit where credit is due. I think a big part of the issue is you realize very early on, and I respect and appreciate the people who are in our comments saying that, I was really sitting down thinking, wow, the Dodgers played a really great game tonight. It's not just that the Mets played poorly, which they certainly did. I think there is a lot more coming that hopefully the Dodgers will see in this series against the Mets. They by no means had their best stuff tonight. It was an off game. It was a bad game. There was no momentum. They scored 0 runs. It was a goose egg. But the Dodgers are a really good team. And I thought you saw that tonight in more ways than one. I said it last night. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is going to be a problem. Like he is really, he's the energizer, man. He was doing great things out there. But, and we'll get into this too, Dodgers are a totally different team than the Phillies. A smarter team, I think, a team with higher IQ, and they're not chasing many pitches. You're going to have to look at the situation in a totally different way.
Yeah, the Dodgers are the most potent offense that the Mets have faced in this postseason, and it's not particularly close. So there is going to need to be an adjustment there if the Mets are going to have any life in this series, if they are going to fight back tomorrow in Game 2, to adjust to that. The Dodgers, like you mentioned, not the Phillies in terms of plate discipline. The Mets got away with a lot in terms of pitching with the Phillies because the Phillies will chase. Tom Verducci pointed it out on Fox. Unlike the Phillies, the Dodgers hitters don't chase much. Through 5 innings, he said on the broadcast, they'd chase 2 pitches of the 25 thrown out of the strike zone. You got to pitch to the Dodgers, and you got to do it in a way that is dancing around that offense that's also extremely dangerous. But I want to go back to Kodai Senga for a minute because I'm not done with that beat.
Neither was I. Come on back. Come on back.
I knew we weren't done.
Come on back.
Here I come. What upsets me the most about the Kodai Senga thing is that it was unnecessary. All right, this is a different story and a different whole plot line. If you were on short rest, someone's hurt, you need Kodai Senga. The Mets did not need Kodai Senga tonight. They tried to get cute. Whoever made that decision, I don't know if it was Carlos Mendoza or David Stearns or whoever in the organization decided that that was the plan. It wasn't needed. You've had Minaya down the stretch, fantastic. Quintana, Peterson, Severino, all pitching so well. You got to this point without Kodai Senga. You did not need Kodai Senga for the reasons that I outlined last night. I don't even know if it's a good idea, even if he was no hit through 3 innings. That's great, it's 3 innings. You're still putting your bullpen out there for 6, 7 innings tonight. It puts you in a bad spot immediately, and the Mets tonight were in a terribly bad spot because they need to put in a relief pitcher in the 2nd inning. That's never where you want to be. I just think, I know the reasons why it happened. I know the ghost fork. He hasn't pitched all year. I understand what the concept was in trying to throw off the Dodgers, but it didn't work. And I think there could have been better planning going into it, particularly when Senga comes out in the post-game press conference after this debacle and says that he noticed mechanical issues pre-game. Also, you had scouts saying throughout baseball that they noticed that he did not look structurally, mechanically, his best going into this start. I think this could have been avoided. And it's tough. It's a tough note to start out on.
And it also is tough because even if and I know all those things are true, but also how much time in advance do these pitchers need to know exactly where they're going to be and all of that? I hear you. I definitely think that looking back upon further review, this was a mistake, and it's clear in the numbers, right? The Mets needed relief pitchers in now for 7 2/3 innings, 23 outs. That is a shocking, alarming number. And hopefully you don't see that steamroll, I really should say, into the games now in the future. Because now when is Peterson available? When are certain people available who you really kind of needed? Like it's tough because I understand that every single game is important, but this was one of those games where like 6 outs through, I'm like wishing that the whole team could just shake hands and forfeit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be an asshole. Like I just was really thinking long term, chess not checkers. I'm like, they're not coming back from this game. Like this was in the postseason, far and away the most lifeless version of the Mets team, joyless version of this game that I have seen. Like it was a horror to sit through. It was not fun at all. And I get it, that's just not how baseball works, but it just had me sitting there thinking like, dang, I wish that this would have went differently. I do have a question for you that I'm going to make my question of the week, because now just looking back, I'm curious what people would think. If you were Mendoza in the situation a few days ago, where would you have put Senga?
Exactly what I said last night. If I'm the manager of the Mets, Senga was in my bullpen before this, and that is not hindsight 2020. I literally said that last night. Kodai Senga is in my bullpen. I did not like the concept of him starting these games for 3 innings because, like I said, for a bullpen that has been gassed down the stretch, now I know they have had 3 days off before this, so nobody should hypothetically be tired in the bullpen at this time. But for a bullpen that has been gassed for weeks, if not months, it's just not a good plan to have a pseudo bullpen game to begin with. In my opinion, I would have Senga as one of those long relief options. I know that may not be possible because of what you brought up, what we touched on last night. I think the Mets kind of cater to what Senga wants.
That's clear.
That's just blunt at this point. And I know the reasons for that and all of that, but I think they cater to his wishes. I just think it's not even hindsight 2020 because like I keep saying, I think this was so easily avoided through better planning, especially, I don't know what could have been changed pregame. At that point, it's so late down this train, but if Senga isn't feeling it mechanically, then you should not put him out there. You know what I mean? There needs to be better communication on all fronts. It's just for a team that has 3 to 4 great starting pitching options, you don't need to be in this position. Now you've gashed your bullpen. Tonight you threw Reed Garrett, David Peterson, Jose Butto, Danny Young. Like the list goes on and on. Peterson and Butto for innings upon innings. Now who's starting game 5 if you get there?
And like all of that to lose horrifically.
Lose horrifically. And it's just the point where like it just didn't need to be this way. They had every starter on full rest. They had 3 days off before this.
I understand. And also just to clarify that question, just for any of our viewers who want to answer it, like I'm also just wondering, is there anyone who thought maybe stick him in there game 2? Or even I heard some people saying game 4 or something. Is there somewhere else where you would have put him or what you would have switched up or rotated? I'm just curious looking back on it. But end of the day, we also don't live in the what ifs on this podcast. We live in the here and now. And this is the reality of the situation. It wasn't the way that you wanted to start this series. But also, at the end of the day, this is a 7-game series, and it was 1 game.
Yes.
I'm not going to freak out and lose my mind over it. I'm just bummed that this is the way that it happened.
Yes. Carlos Mendoza did not commit in the post-game press conference to going back to Kodai Senga for game 5. I will put it on my record right now. I think that would be the dumbest decision. I think if the Mets go back to starting Kodai Senga for a game, they need their head examined. He said, quote, "We have to wait and see how he responds. I think it's going to come down to how he's going to bounce back." Now, with David Peterson having thrown 40 pitches tonight, is Peterson available for a game 5? Honestly, he should be. They have a day off on Tuesday, so that still is kind of regular rest to start a potential game 5. I don't think David Peterson is out of that question just yet, but you also saw him be not extremely successful against this Dodger lineup tonight. Now, the flip side of this coin, before we get into everything else down the line here, looking ahead, is that also the Mets didn't hit tonight. The Mets had 3 hits. The offense struggled. Just when they started to start a rally, never count the Mets out of anything, right? So when it was 3-0, I actually thought this game was over by no means. That's the spot the Mets like to have teams in. When it got to be 6-0, I was like, all right, folks, like you said, maybe we could pack it in. Not gonna lie, I just didn't see them coming back. They didn't have any spark tonight at the plate. And then when Jesse Winker decides to go out there and make the worst base running play of all time, that killed any life they had. That was it. Jesse Winker, I don't know what the hell that was.
It had the feeling from the start. Like, I feel like this was the epitome, if you look up in the definition, the quote, just one of those games.
Yeah.
Like, it was just one of those games. Even I feel like there were a couple hits, like Marte a few times, a hit that goes right to the wall, and then the outfielder catches it.
Great catches.
I mean, that was the other thing. Like the Mets made mistakes tonight, and the Dodgers, all in all, are relatively mistake-free.
Yeah.
Like, this is a team that really plays very clean baseball, very sound baseball. That's something that makes me nervous too. But yeah, back to the Winker thing. It was just kind of one of those bonehead moments where you're like, what really is going on here? I'm still, even upon looking at the replay, I'm confused at what exactly made him hesitate. I don't know why he didn't just continue to run to third base, because it was clear, at least to me, that he did have the time to do just that. But to then hesitate and be in the middle, that's pretty much the worst thing you can do. I know he's rolling his eyes. That's not something that we normally see from him. But to your point, from a momentum standpoint, when there were all told 29 at-bats tonight and 3 hits, yeah, listen, it's never over until it's over. I feel like that's what October baseball is all about. But, when the broadcasters were saying early on, this was maybe like the first inning, they're like, oh, well, the Mets have the Dodgers exactly where they want what they want this team because they like to come back from being down. I'm like, that's true. Like, until it's not.
Yeah.
Like, 9-0, not where you want to be.
No.
Not where you want to have the Dodgers at all.
Not how we dreamt it up. The Winker thing, the problem was not that he hesitated. The problem was that he didn't keep going. He just stopped.
Yeah.
Like, I think even there was a chance he could have made it if I don't know what happened there. He literally just froze. It was bad. He also had third base. If you look at the replay of that, he was going to make it there easily. So that was a momentum killer. That was a killer. I mean, for all the harping that we have done on Kodai Senga and the pitching, because that kind of, I guess, is the story tonight, even though they didn't hit either. It's also true that, look, if they started Sean Manaea tonight and that same progression of 3 hits happened, then you just burn Sean Manaea and you got 3 hits. You know what I mean? So sure, maybe it's not 9-0, but you still didn't score, so you probably still don't win. So these are all the things that go into playoff baseball that make it so difficult to predict these things. But all I have to say is, on the heels of this, I mean, I'm certainly glad it's a 7-game series, as I'm sure most Mets fans are. I am fine, and I said this coming into the day, getting out of Los Angeles games 1 and 2 with a split. In my head, I am fine going back to New York with a tie series. Going back to New York down 2-0 in the series is a really hard mountain to climb out of, which is going to put me saying that tomorrow is as close to a must-win game as the Mets have had this postseason.
Yep, Jolly Olive, a guy on Twitter who is a well-known Mets fan, someone who works in the sphere, said exactly that. Win tomorrow, and it's still mission accomplished in LA. And I totally, totally agree with that. There were a couple, I have to say, compared to how the normal Mets fan base is, Twitter was sort of rocking and rolling tonight with the continued positivity despite this loss, and I really appreciate that. There's another tweet that I liked from this guy named Danny Abriano, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And he said, notable Mets losses in game 1 of a best-of-7 series. 1986 NLCS, 1986 World Series. Turned out fine.
Yeah.
Woo!
Love to hear
That's
that.
a heater.
Yeah.
I even have one more. I like this too. It says, the last 3 times a team won an LCS game by at least 9 runs, that team lost the series. Again, that's just kind of freaky deaky stuff, but it goes to show that like one game, it is not the end all be all. And I totally, totally agree. If you come out with a win tomorrow, easily the most important game of the entire season, now look at the situation that you're in going back to Citi Field.
Yeah, the Mets have it in front of them tomorrow. I am not going to sit here and hit the panic button until a potential loss tomorrow night. In that instance, I will get a panic button and I will sit here and I will hit it. If they win tomorrow night, look, you got your ace on the mound. Sean Manaea has been their ace down the stretch. You have a Dodgers team that's going to be flying real high after this 9-0 performance tonight. And the Dodgers, it is very notable, I did not have a chance to listen to the Dodgers postgame, so I am not sure what they said. Maybe it's updated, but I believe the Dodgers are either throwing Walker Buehler, who has not been very good, or a bullpen game tomorrow. So that certainly gives the Mets offensively an opportunity. And don't you get me wrong, I just know that Francisco Lindor or somebody else in that visiting clubhouse tonight, I don't know if you want to say called a team meeting, maybe it wasn't as formal as that, but got up there and said, we need to get our SHIT together for tomorrow.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to even end up finding out that Senga took some accountability. I mean, you could just tell, you could just feel it. I feel like I'm going to be thinking about his mindset pregame for a long time. Like I know what you said, and I think it's still true. Like at some point you're just too far down the line to really start changing things up. And I think it is an interesting point that you bring up that, you know, all told, like, let's just say they did put Manaea out there tonight and it really was a 3-hit situation. Then it's like, would you have wanted to blow him in that spot? Exactly. I guess not. However, I do feel that the pitching and the hitting bounce off each other.
Yes.
I think that it must be hard mentally once you're down 3 runs, you're down 9 runs to really think and really believe we're able to come back from this. I think if you have better pitching in there, sometimes I feel like that is the catalyst that the hitters need to actually get on a run. But at end of the day, it is worth saying you're not going to win any game if you score 0 runs.
Yeah.
The pitching's the story, but let's not forget about that. Like this was not a fun game to watch either way. There was just no hits.
No, the wheels fell off the bus nearly in every area. I don't think there was like a defensive even blunder I would point out, but there was some missed throws by like in the infield. It was not the Mets' night, okay? Now, we also should be fair to sit here and say the Mets have not had a clunker in a very long time. They've been, even in the losses in the postseason, they've been competitive all the way through. So I really hate to be sitting here after game 1 of the National League Championship Series saying that the Mets were due for a clunker, but they were. That's not an excuse, but I am at least happy that it happened in game 1 so that they can go in there tonight and into tomorrow and try to turn things around. Also notable, the Mets had 3 days off before this. The Mets had 0 time off before this, pretty much dating back to that last series, game 161 and 162 against the Braves. I mean, the Hurricane, like that was 2 weeks ago at this point. The Mets have had no time off, so I don't know if that affected them. I know they probably all needed rest. It certainly got the arms a little fresher, but it does make you think for a team that had so much momentum and was so momentum-based, you took 3 days off to, I know they didn't sit around, but to sit around and to fly out to the West Coast, and then this happens, just makes you wonder. But I do believe, maybe I'm being too optimistic, that they will come out there tomorrow and they will be ready. Due to Major League Baseball's unfortunate scheduling, tomorrow's a day game, but we fight on.
We fight on. I was just gonna say, like, are you feeling well? Because you're being rather positive tonight.
Well, I vowed to everyone in my life who was doing wellness checks on me tonight, got a lot of text messages about if I was doing okay.
Sure.
And I promised everybody that I wouldn't go full tilt. I wouldn't have a full manic episode until a loss tomorrow night. So this is me talking myself through it. Come back tomorrow night for the manic episode. Thanks.
Like literally, if tomorrow they lose, I'm officially the therapist, and Ashley is my client, my patient. But we don't have to go there yet. I also did want to say credit where credit's due. Was a cool moment. They lost. I get that. But Francisco Alvarez caught Shohei Ohtani stealing for the first time since July. I mean, that just deserves a little round of applause.
It does. It certainly does. Yeah, I mean, you got Lindor out there tagging Ohtani. It's like MVP versus should be the MVP. So.
And you know what?
Sorry.
No. So sorry. This guy, he did so great.
Alvy.
But I was also gonna point out. Listen, I am one of those people who thinks Shohei Ohtani should be the MVP.
I agree. That was a joke.
Most people say that. I know it's a joke. Everybody relax. But calm down. However, I think that if you watch that play, when Lindor picked up Ohtani's helmet, I'm like, he's an MVP man. He's the most valuable person.
Always the MVP of our hearts, certainly.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have anything else. I know tomorrow, to me, I will say it again, is as close to a must-win as the New York Mets have had in a few weeks in the MLB postseason. I do not want to go back to New York down 2-0. I will also say the Mets, in my opinion, and this is a controversial take that I'm sure everybody will tell me is wrong, so feel free. The Mets not having home field advantage technically and having the middle of the series, games 3, 4, 5 at home, I actually like that. I like that the Mets have that. I understand that if it goes to game 6 and 7, that's at the Dodgers Stadium and you have to go back to LA. But I think just having that stretch of the 3 in the middle, all in front of the Citi Field crowd, that can allow you to build some momentum. Say the Mets and the Dodgers go back to New York tied 1-1 in this series. All of a sudden, it's a fresh slate. The Mets have 3 in front of them at home. Then I'm feeling good.
And honestly, I'm going to say it. I mean, mind you, that stadium was packed tonight, but it is by no means the hardest place to play.
It is not Citi Field.
No, it is not by any means. But even as far as other opposing places that they've played, like I feel like they're walking into Philadelphia, and I'm kind of like, oh,
yes.
for all that we say about X, Y, and Z, those fans show up. Like they stand up the whole game. Like this didn't feel like that vibe to me. Like it felt sort of relaxed, sort of West Coast to be
there
honest
were some
with
seats
you.
available in the upper deck. That's all I gotta say. It wasn't standing room only. You can come at me if you're a Dodgers fan. Sorry.
But listen, for the Dodgers fans, I mean, listen, rock on. Great game by the Dodgers. And I have to say, Flaherty was awesome. Like we didn't really take a beat
So
on that,
great, yeah.
but he just cooked this team. I mean, he really did a good job, especially considering the fact that like this is a guy who like grew up watching his favorite players play in that stadium. He's an LA native. Like, I'm not saying I'm pleased with it, but cool moment for him.
Yes, we gave credit to the Dodgers offense. Certainly, I think the most dangerous one the Mets have faced throughout this run. But the Dodgers pitching, you also have to give credit to. I mean, they have had a number of injuries on that staff this year. They've fought back. We'll see what the starters do the rest of the way, because I do know that we came into this saying that if the Dodgers have a hole, it might be their starting pitching. So we'll see what goes on here. But Jack Flaherty certainly got them off to a good start. And we know that the Dodgers bullpen is also a higher caliber bullpen than the Mets have faced. Even though the Mets got to a good bullpen, they got to Philadelphia's best 3-4 guys in that bullpen. So we just have to see. I am not making any rash statements after game one. I am restraining myself. But I will say the Dodgers are the most complete team that the Mets have faced. And the Dodgers are the biggest challenge, and I'm comfortable saying that. The Dodgers, like you said, they play smart baseball. You saw them do some sacrifice bunting tonight to get runners in scoring position. The Dodgers are a well-coached, well-oiled machine that the Mets are going to have to be on their A-game to beat.
There is not one doubt about it. I just had two other things that came to my mind, then we'll wrap it up and get out of here. The first is that while all of that is true, and I also think it's true that we, you know, a lot of the times this podcast is stat-based and we like to look at some of the numbers. But I really do believe at this point in October, I was sitting there watching this game tonight thinking the stats just don't really matter as much as they did in the regular season. Like at this point, it is about moments. And we've already seen so many moments of greatness. Even the seeding and all of that. Like I was watching just some reels today, and I think that this is an interesting point too. I feel like baseball, compared to other professional sports, there are just so many teams that are so much more evenly matched that it really does feel like any team can win and that is just year in and year out. I think that's part of what makes October baseball and playoff baseball so fun to watch. Yeah. But all that to say, just because the Dodgers are a smart team and well-coached team and they have some great players, which is all true, I still have not lost any hope at all that the Mets can pull this out and win this game based on their vibes and momentum alone, alongside all the other things we talked about last night. The one other thing I wanted to say from an excitement standpoint is I don't know if any of you guys have seen this or not. I'm sure you probably have. But there is one Instagram account that I've seen floating around a lot lately, and it's a dog. It's a corgi. The corgi, yeah, the corgi.
Yeah.
Who picks all of the different sports teams, who's going to win, who's going to lose. And I just want to let everybody know that the corgi said that the Mets would win this series and said that the Mets would lose the first game. I wrote it down. The corgi said the Mets would win games 2, 3, 5, and 6. I just want to say that now in case, God forbid, it happens.
Mets in 6. That's what I've been saying.
Mets in 6. You said it. I said it. The corgi said it.
The corgi said it. Look, the Mets have fought back all year long. They have to do it tomorrow in probably the most important moment yet. I mean, there's been so many important moments. You could say that for a few things. But the Mets, I don't want to say they have the Dodgers where they want them because I wanted that game one. I think game one does set the tone for the series in a few ways. But the Mets have fought back relentlessly time and time again. I am not ready to declare the Mets magic dead. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow.
Will the magic continue or not? We'll find out tomorrow. We'll be with you here for the whole rest of this ride, no matter how long it lasts. Great time to, again, mention you can find us anywhere, social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. If you've been following with us the entire ride since May, or you just got here, we want to say thank you so much for the support. We continue to see that subscriber number growing. So please come back for more, and we will see you back here for another recap soon.